Own Your Armor: Revolutionary Change for Workplace Culture by Michelle Brody. Hi everyone. Today I am going to review the book, Own Your Armor: Revolutionary Change for Workplace Culture by Michelle Brody. When people feel threatened, they build up their protective armor, and that fuels a perpetual cycle of workplace dysfunction. Typical symptoms of a dysfunctional workplace include a paucity of trust, accountability and honesty. People behave unprofessionally, blame one another, gossip and complain. Frustrations run high. Employees expect their managers to fix the problems. The managers urge their staff members to work on their collaboration and communication skills, but incremental improvements cannot repair a fractured culture. No single individual is to blame. Leaders and employees, knowingly or unknowingly, contribute to the dysfunction and thus share responsibility for harming the culture, and for making things better. The root of team dynamics problems is almost always a pileup of armor. Communication breaks down when people feel threatened and strap on their armor as a defense mechanism. Everyone, particularly leaders and managers, needs to remove that protective gear, figure out what caused their defensiveness in the first place and own how their behavior affects their coworkers. Owning your armor will elevate your culture and enable your employees and teams to maximize their potential. Bad culture often bubbles beneath the surface and isn't talked about, but people must address it in order to improve it. You have to search beneath the surface to understand team and individual dynamics. Imagine colleagues gathered around a conference table engaging in professional dialogue concerning strategy, initiatives and implementation. But under the table, there are unspoken resentments, threats, grievances and judgments that cripple productivity and impede honest interaction. How does the leader really feel about the people on the team, and vice versa? Are team members respectful of one another? Why does David raise an eyebrow when Sam offers a suggestion? Why does Carolyn send a quick message to Miriam from her laptop as the leader explains the team's plans? The armor we choose tends to be aligned with our preferences for flight or fight in stressful situations. Interacting above the table, where people utilize their professional tools and behave civilly, is much more pleasant, productive and self-fulfilling. But choosing not to deal with, in fact, deciding to deny, underlying, sabotaging emotions won't make them disappear. To transform your culture, you must confront the root causes of problem areas. Once you acknowledge that threats and armor are fueling the flames of dysfunction, you can begin rehabilitation. Fight or flight reactions cause armor to build up in a team when there are threats in the environment. The workplace offers an opportunity to earn a living, build genuine camaraderie with your coworkers, and experience success and stability. However, the workplace also carries serious potential threats such as job loss, unjust treatment, unrealistic expectations and interpersonal conflict. Human beings instinctively try to protect themselves from these threats as well as they can, by putting on some kind of armor. Your fight or flight instinct typically determines your response to troubled environments. Some people instinctively stand their ground, advocate for their viewpoints or compete, fight, for what they want. Others will try to distance themselves from conflict, avoid interacting when conversation gets difficult or express annoyance by withdrawing their help. Both approaches are protective, natural and understandable, but they have a negative impact on other team members. People don't intend to be difficult, but threats or general unhappiness bring out people's dark, protective, tactical side, their evil twin. Putting on armor means something is amiss. Level-headed, good people resort to less optimal behavior when they feel threatened. To return those people or that team to their best selves, first identify the threats that are causing their armoring. Armor is justified on the inside, to self-protect, but it almost always irritates others on the outside. When an armored colleague reacts heatedly to a troublesome situation, remember that he or she is usually level-headed. Flawed or broken teams often feature people who know better behaving badly. To return those people or that team to a functional state, you first need to identify the nature of the threats in your workplace. Do they come from the outside or do they signal poor chemistry among team members? Armor can make reasonable people seem like bad apples, and can cause chain reactions that affect the whole team. If you ask employees to diagnose the cause of dysfunction in their workplace, they will typically single out the instigators, those people they believe are disrespectful, uncooperative, credit stealing or prone to shirking their professional responsibilities. In reality, the so-called bad apples are usually solid professionals wearing armor to cope with circumstances they find difficult. Rather than assigning blame, focus on repairing the troubled interactions among armored good people. Armored behavior comes across as less professional behavior. For example, Kyla is most productive when she can concentrate on her work with minimal distractions. Frustrated by constant interruptions, she armors up and decides not to pay attention to things that compromise her efficiency. She checks her email less frequently and avoids interacting with coworkers she fears will waste her time. Her solution for avoiding intrusions makes sense, but now her colleagues feel irritated and perceive Kyla as a poor team member, selfish, unaccommodating and inflexible. People often mistakenly interpret armoring as a personality defect, when in fact it is adaptive behavior anyone can recognize in themselves and others and can alter. Some managers believe bad behavior indicates incompetency or the inability to get along with others. Enlightened managers recognize that armored employees act out because something or someone threatens them. Managers with this perceptive, compassionate mindset are far more likely to have success addressing employees' troubled behavior than managers who focus only on constructive feedback about bad behavior. Threat armor cycles are a very common feature of all kinds of conflict, including between couples. The threat armor dynamic makes it particularly difficult to repair team culture. When someone puts on armor in self-defense, that causes other employees to armor up as well. This fuels and perpetuates a cycle of mistrust. People do not feel comfortable shedding their armor under threatening conditions, yet continuing to wear it doesn't help anyone, either. The only solution is for everyone to take off his or her armor together, to stop the threats the armor causes and to deal with one another as their best selves. For team members to take off their armor to restore good communication, they first have to own their armor, beginning with honest self-assessment. You can't fix a dysfunctional team culture with edicts and reminders to everyone to communicate more openly. Nor can you speak to team members about how their armor affects collaboration. They are likely to respond defensively. Instead, everyone, leaders included, must conduct an honest self-assessment and do some thinking about their own behavior. How does my armor, my individual response to threat, intersect with everyone else's to co-create problematic dynamics on this team? People must own their armor and its impact, and that requires honest self-assessment. To own your contribution to your team's dynamics, ask yourself some insightful questions on specific issues, such as 1. Pinpointing threats. What frustrates me most at work? 2. Owning your armor. How do I tend to react to what frustrates me? What are the things I do that I use to protect myself? What less optimal behaviors come out for me? 3. Owning your impact. How could my reactions to frustration look to the people around me? How might my armor make things more difficult for others or add to tension in the team? Everyone's upbringing and experiences influence what situations feel most threatening and what armor you might use. The more you understand your own reactive system, the more you'll have control over situations where your armor might come out. When members own their armor, that changes a team's culture, unlocks everyone's true potential and restores optimal team productivity. After you examine and take responsibility for your armor, try to have a constructive conversation with a coworker with whom you clashed. Focus the dialogue on what you each learned about threats and how putting on armor negatively affects work relationships. You might be reluctant to confess your vulnerabilities to another person, particularly someone with whom you've argued and particularly if you plan to initiate the conversation. That's why simultaneous armor owning typically works best at an off-site location where everyone has gathered for that purpose. You're likely to feel more comfortable as teammates lower their defenses to discuss sensitive issues. And that may make you feel more willing to lower your defenses in turn. The key to changing culture is to remove armor and return to interacting with each other. Off-site sessions usually require an external coordinator or HR representative. Team leaders should participate in the program alongside their team members because they also have armor to own. As a team leader, try not to wait until communication deteriorates so badly that your entire team requires an intervention. Initiate conversations about team members owning their armor whenever you sense an erosion of trust or an increase in poor behavior. Address communication issues before everyone fully armors up and remediation becomes more difficult. The trust building that comes from having own your armor conversations actually is best to do before the dynamics are too locked up. Some people are further along than others in their understanding of their own psychology. Those who demonstrate greater introspection and empathy and who shed their armor more easily can encourage less insightful team members. Most teams that are having difficulties require ongoing dialogue to repair their dysfunctional dynamics. That won't happen in only one session or one person-to-person exchange. Happily, the process becomes easier and more productive with each conversation. You can't force people to drop their armor by telling them they are too defensive or that their behavior harms others. That approach comes across as judgmental and mistrustful. Owning your own armor and admitting that being armored up may threaten others is the most effective way to encourage your teammates to be more open. Courageous leaders powerfully inspire others by owning the impact of their own armor first. Leaders are not exempt from armoring up or from owning their armor. They need to be especially proactive because of their outsized impact on their team members and the team's culture. Leaders have their own issues. They're required to meet certain performance standards, and must answer to their superiors. Leaders armor up against threats, like anyone else, but they may hesitate to analyze themselves in depth because they are afraid to show vulnerability. Leaders can't expect to see progress among their team members when they blame those employees instead of admitting their own shortcomings. If he or she doubles down with more armor and no owning, the dynamic grows, and it gets exceedingly more difficult for the leader to lead. Leaders who stand up in front of the room and discuss their threats and armor make a positive impression. The more leaders and team members talk about their armor, the more they can advance their team and their organization to a healthy culture. Takeaways. 1. When people feel threatened, they build up their protective armor, and that fuels a perpetual cycle of workplace dysfunction. 2. Bad culture often bubbles beneath the surface and isn't talked about, but people must address it in order to improve it. 3. Fight or flight reactions cause armor to build up in a team when there are threats in the environment. 4. Armor can make reasonable people seem like bad apples, and can cause chain reactions that affect the whole team. 5. For team members to take off their armor to restore good communication, they first have to own their armor, beginning with honest self-assessment. 6. When members own their armor, that changes a team's culture, unlocks everyone's true potential and restores optimal team productivity. 7. Courageous leaders powerfully inspire others by owning the impact of their own armor first. Please like, share and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.